Think about what you are chasing right now. Not what you would say if someone asked, what you are actually chasing. More money, more status, a bigger apartment, a better title, more followers, more security, more of whatever it is that feels like it would finally make things okay. Now ask the question almost no one asks. Who decided that any of that was worth chasing? Not you, not consciously. You were born into a world that had already decided what mattered, what success looked like, what a good life required, what you should want, what you should fear. And you accepted it, the way everyone accepts the currency of the country they are born into, without questioning whether it is actually worth anything. Philosophy, real philosophy, is the act of stopping, looking at the currency everyone around you is spending their lives chasing, and asking, is any of this actually real? Most philosophers ask that question with words. One man asked it with his entire life. His name was Diogenes, and he is the strangest, most defiant, most genuinely free human being who ever lived. He owned one cloak, slept in a clay jar in the public marketplace, ate scraps, begged from strangers. And when Alexander the Great, the most powerful man in the world, came to meet him, Diogenes told him to get out of his sunlight. Alexander walked away and said, "If I were not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes." That is not a coincidence. That is the entire philosophy in one sentence. To understand what Diogenes was actually doing, you need to understand the problem he was trying to solve. Human beings, he believed, are born with a very small number of genuine needs. Food, water, shelter from the cold, basic human connection. These are natural, these are real, these can actually be satisfied. But then society steps in, and society adds a second list. You need wealth, you need status, you need the right clothes, the right address, the right reputation. You need to appear successful. You need other people to approve of you. You need to be seen as respectable. And here is the catastrophe Diogenes identified. The second list never ends. The first list, the natural one, can be satisfied. You can eat until you are not hungry. You can drink until you are not thirsty. But the second list? There is no amount of wealth at which you feel wealthy enough, no amount of status at which you feel secure enough, no level of approval at which you feel seen enough. Because those things were never real needs. They were manufactured, stamped onto you by a society that needed you to keep chasing them. Diogenes called this defacing the currency. It was not a metaphor. His father actually ran the city mint. At some point, one of them stamped counterfeit coins. They were exiled. And Diogenes spent the rest of his life doing the same thing, not to coins, but to every value, every convention, every assumption that people accepted without questioning. He called himself a dog, not as an insult, as a philosophy. A dog does not perform. A dog does not pretend to want things it does not want. A dog does not dress itself up to impress other dogs. A dog simply is what it is, hungry when it is hungry, content when it is content, honest at all times. Diogenes believed this was closer to genuine virtue than anything the philosophers in their fine robes were producing. He walked into the marketplace, where eating in public was considered shameful, and ate. When people stared, he said. I eat when I am hungry. What is more natural than that? Plato defined a human being as a featherless biped. Diogenes plucked a chicken, walked into Plato's lecture, and threw it on the floor. Here is Plato's man. When someone asked him why he was begging from a statue, he said, to practice being refused. When his slave escaped, and people expected him to be upset, he shrugged and said, if Manes can live without Diogenes, why not Diogenes without Manes? He was captured by pirates at one point and sold as a slave at auction. The auctioneer asked what skills he had. Diogenes looked out at the crowd, pointed to a wealthy man in the front row, and said, sell me to that man. He needs a master. The man bought him, made him tutor to his children, eventually freed him. Diogenes stayed, because Diogenes was already free, had always been free. That is the point that gets lost in all the strange stories. Diogenes was not performing misery. He was not suffering for a cause. He was not trying to prove something through pain. He was, by every account, genuinely content, genuinely light, genuinely free. Because he had done something almost no one does. He had looked at the entire second list, every manufactured need, every social performance, everything people spend their lives chasing, and he had put it down, and discovered that without it, he needed almost nothing. And needing almost nothing, he was afraid of almost nothing. And afraid of almost nothing, he was free. This is why Alexander came to see him. Alexander had conquered Greece, was about to conquer Persia, had more wealth and power than any man alive, and he was not free. He was a slave to his ambition, to his need for more conquest, to the expectations of his men, his empire, his legacy. He found Diogenes lying in the morning sun, introduced himself, offered him anything he wanted. Diogenes opened one eye. Stand out of my sunlight. Alexander's guards were furious. Alexander was not, because Alexander understood in that moment that he was looking at something he had never achieved. A man who wanted nothing from him, needed nothing from him, feared nothing from him. A man who was, without any army, any palace, any title, more free than the emperor of the world. Now here is the question Diogenes spent his entire life asking. He walked through Athens every day with a lamp, in broad daylight. People stopped, stared, asked why he carried a lamp when the sun was already out. He said, I am looking for a human being. Not an honest man, a human being. Because what Diogenes found, every day, in every marketplace, in every conversation, was people who were not living as themselves. They were living as their reputation, their wealth, their role, their performance of success, their mask. And inside all of that performance, there was no one home. He could not find a human being, not because humans did not exist, but because almost everyone he met had traded themselves for the second list. Before he died, people asked what should be done with his body. He said, throw it outside the city walls, let the dogs have it. When they protested, he said, leave a stick nearby so I can chase them off. But you will not be conscious, you will not be able to use a stick. Exactly. Then what does it matter? They buried him with honors at the city gate. He would have found that funny. Here is what Diogenes is asking you. Not to live in a jar, not to throw everything away, not to tell powerful people to get out of your sunlight. He is asking one question. How much of what you are chasing did you actually choose? How much of it is the currency someone else minted, and you accepted without ever asking whether it was worth anything? The less you need, the freer you are. Not because poverty is virtuous, but because every manufactured need is a chain, and every chain belongs to someone else. Diogenes walked through Athens with a lamp in broad daylight, looking for a human being. He never found one. The question he was really asking is whether you are one. This is Philochemy. We will see you in the next one.